Hello, I'm Rebecca from Rainy Hill Designs, and today we're tackling one of my old favourites, the Robin cushion. It's always a favourite in classes, and it's a great choice if you're looking for something Christmassy but also cosy and classy. Just a heads up, this video is a little on the long side. I have deliberately made it very detailed because I wanted beginners to feel that they could understand what was happening. We're going to be tackling patchwork squares, applique, quilting, and even binding. So there's a lot of information in here. So grab your fabric scraps and a cuppa and let's get started.
First of all, gather all your Christmassy scraps and cut them into 2.5-inch squares. To be honest, I didn't need to show you all of this footage, but I thought it was kind of fun watching it speeded up like this. You want a really good assortment of colours and styles and patterns, lights and darks, reds and greens. Right, then I'm taking my heat and bond or Bond-A-Web, whichever you have, and I'm tracing the elements of the design for the applique. So there's the body of the bird, we're going to trace the wing, and of course the red breast. Don't worry about any of the other detail in the design at this stage, we're just getting the block colours of the applique down. Now I'm going to cut those with paper scissors until they're individual pieces of heat and bond. These are then going to get fused onto the reverse side of the fabric. You'll see there's a sticky side or a shiny side to the heat and bond. That's what needs to be facing the reverse of the fabric. And then you're going to press very lightly. You can over iron this, so take it easy and go steady. I tend to count to 3. So 1, 2, 3. There you go. Then you're going to cut round them very neatly on the lines. Don't use your very best scissors for this. I use my second best scissors. So, because obviously it's a bit of a paradox, you're cutting both fabric and paper. Take your time and cut them out really accurately. The neater the cutting, the better the finished item will be. Now I'm cutting out the final bird shape here, and as soon as I've finished cutting those out, I'm going to peel off the paper back. I've taken my base fabric and I've folded it in 4 and ironed it so there's creases, and now I'm centering the individual elements of the bird in order together on the fabric. Taking that to the ironing board very carefully and fusing it. Top tip, generally a good idea to line it all up on the ironing board rather than carry it to the ironing board. Just checking there to make sure the edges are on. I'm drawing out the design in reverse here. You can see the bird through the paper, and I'm actually just going over that on the other side of the design sheet. I'm drawing the whole outline, including all the details that we didn't do in fabric. So I'm going to be drawing the beak, the tail, the legs, and of course the holly in his beak. Here's Oscar. Thank you, Oscar, for making an appearance. Of course, if you're feeling imaginative, you could try your hand at drawing some mistletoe. Now I'm lining up the fabric, and you can see the outline of the bird there. I'm lining it up and using a very sharp pencil. I'm going to very lightly trace in the details that are missing, so the tail feathers and so on. Now you'll see that I'm very lightly doing this, and I'm also not putting in the detail inside, I'm just doing the very outline. There we go with the holly. And finally his legs, or her legs. And then a little spray of 505 on some stitch and tear, which is going to stabilise our fabric. It's a real game changer, so do take this step and do use stabiliser. Dropping the feed dogs, you have to be quick there to spot that. And then putting on my free motion quilting or embroidery foot. This is actually a quilting foot, but it does the same. Picking up my bottom thread, and then using the needle as if it was a pencil. Now the difference between free motion embroidery and free motion quilting is that free motion embroidery, you can really go slowly. Now it looks like I'm going very fast here because obviously I've speeded up the footage for you, but take your time, go really slowly. This is actually really good fun. Now you can draw with a pencil, you can draw with a needle. It's going to take a little bit of practice, but you'll be surprised. Now I'm going around each of the individual elements, and I go around twice because I think it gives them that kind of modern free motion sort of effect that you get. And then going down and doing his little legs. And then finally I'm going to go over and do the holly and his beak. It's such fun. But do, as I say, do forget that this is going fast and take your time and do this slowly, okay? You've done that. Set your machine back up to straight sewing, because obviously you need to. And then we're going to remove the stitch and tear. The clue was in the name, stitch and tear. Now, I'll be honest, this particular stitch and tear was a bit that I had in a box, in my box of stabilisers, and it was an absolute beast of a thing. It was very thick and it was quite hard to pull off. You see, I'm taking the time to pull out the main sort of interior shapes. Don't try to get every morsel out from between the holly and in the wing, in the tail feathers and that. Now, taking some embroidery thread, black for the eye and red for the berries, cutting off a lady's length, so approximately 30 centimetres. This is me tying a knot. I'm not going to try and describe this, but this is my preferred way of putting knots in my thread. You come up from the bottom, you pull the thread all the way up, you take the thread in your left hand, and with your right hand, if you're right-handed, you place the needle on top and wind it around like that. And then you point the point back where you want your knot. Now you'll see my thumb holding the loop in my left hand. Pull the needle through, give it a tug. I'm sorry about the angle of the camera. And there you go, that's a little French knot. Now I thought I'd include this, so 3 stitches. It's quite a delicate fabric, this, so what I'm doing is I'm picking up the stitches in that machine embroidery just so that I'm holding that secure. My grandmother taught me how to divide embroidery thread when I was about 3 years old, which is a very long time ago. And you start in the centre and you pull the sides apart, and it usually doesn't tangle. And here I am just doing a couple of berries on our holly. You can do as many as you like. I tend to do 3. I'm a bit of a creature of habit. Now I've done some extra robins. Here I'm just giving the block a trim down to 7.5 inches, sticking to the ruler. And here we go, we're going to start laying out our 2.5 inch squares. There is a chart on the pattern. Once you've printed off the pattern instructions, there's a little chart, but basically it's a row of 8 with another row of 8, so 2 rows of 8 at the top and the bottom, so there's 2 of those, and then the 2 side blocks are 2 rows of 4, so 8 in a block. Take your time with this. Again, it's all about taking your time. Actually spend a little bit of time arranging them and deciding what colours you like together and what sort of design you want to do. I actually think this is part of the fun of patchwork. I'm going to start sewing them together. So we line up our 2 squares and we start feeding them through the machine. Hold your tails when you start sewing. You're going to use a small stitch, so a 2mm stitch, and I've got my machine set for a 1/4 inch seam. You can get 1/4 inch tape, or you can use a 1/4 inch foot, or you can just read the plate on the machine. But to be honest, consistency is what's important. I'm just putting through a few slowly just to show you how much care I take lining them up. And you'll see the machine takes them. This is called chain piecing. Saves a lot of trouble with thread, with stopping and starting. And here I'm putting through a thread saver. This is a clever little thing. It's just a little square folded in half, and it allows you to just sort of have a break in the sewing. Now keep working with those pairs, sewing pairs together until you've built the units as in the chart. Here I'm nesting, and you'll see I flip the seam allowance in one direction for one set and in the opposite direction for the other set. Here's one of our units. You're going to carry on and make all 4. And now we're going to work on the inner border. First I'm cutting off the salvage edge, and then I'm going to cut them to 7.5 inches. Line up the 2 7.5 inch pieces with the top and the bottom of your robin block, and pin them. Now I'm speeding this up. Always pin the two ends, then the middle. So if you watch, I pin two ends and then the middle, and then I'll possibly put some extras in. Good old thread saver there, helping us out. And we're going to stitch the 1/4 inch seam straight down the side here. Take your pins out as you sew. Now I have to admit I have a very bad habit of getting to the end of a seam, as you will see here, and then picking up the other seam and pushing it through, as you can see. Now I do tend to go in with my little scissors fairly quickly and snip, as you'll see in just a second. There, so I've snipped it free. It's maybe not as clear the way I do it, but it saves thread. And there we go, pop the thread saver through again. And there she is. Now I did forget to film sewing on the other two, but it's the same thing, but they're longer. They're actually 8.5. Now I'm lining up the blocks just to check that I've got them right, make sure that I've got the right pieces in the right place, and then I'm going to sew on the two side panels. Now these should measure 8.5, and we know that our nice red square measures 8.5, so they should line up. And again, pinning either end and then the middle. And I like to pin on both borders just to save me time. Both ends and the middle. There you go. And then again back to the machine, 1/4 inch seam, and sew those two. And again I'm going to do the picky up thing where I pick up and then snip and put through. There you go. Thread saver. So now I've got the two sides on. I'm going to add the bottom on. Now here we have to do a little bit of careful nesting. So the first two blocks on the end have to line up with two other blocks. So I'm pinning the end, and then I'm going to pin the first intersection, making sure that the seams go in one direction and the other, alternate. And then I'm going to pin the next intersection. And this intersection is blocks on the one side, but on the other side it's actually the red border. And as you'll see in a second there, I'm going to the other end and pinning the two blocks from that end too. And then you've got the sort of 8.5 length in the middle that is just red border on one side. So it just makes it a little bit easier to pin. And then you're going to work along, stitching again, taking the pins out as you go. And the same for the second side. There. And there you have your patchwork top finished. How easy was that? Next we have to layer it up for quilting. So you have a back, a wadding and a front. I like to fuse my back on first. I always think the last bit you fuse is the bit that looks the neatest, and we want the front neat. Here I'm using 505 temporary adhesive. You'll see how I only pulled back half there, and now I'm going to turn it and pull back the other half, and then smooth and spray. Smooth down after spraying, and then I'm going to fuse the top on. As I say, the last part that you fuse is the piece that will look more even, and I want the front to look more even. There, now we're all ready for quilting. So drop the feed dogs again and change the foot again for the quilting foot. This time it's actually doing what it's supposed to. Quilting gloves, optional, but I love them. You're going to go in, pick up your bottom thread to the top and pull it up. You'll see me doing that there. Now we're not going to snip the threads. You might have remembered seeing me snip threads when I did the embroidery. This time we're not snipping the threads, and you'll see why later. It's my lovely holy gloves. I'm going to start stitching. Now the difference between free motion embroidery and free motion quilting is that for quilting you do need to run the machine fast, but you will notice that as much as I'm running the machine fast, I'm actually moving my hands very slowly. So I never move both hands at the same time. If you watch, I'm sort of walking my hands. You can see how they're just sort of moving in, you know, one at a time rather than together. And I'm doing what we call an all over meander here. It's quite mesmerising to watch. I absolutely love it. And the aim of the game is to make your stitching come out smooth and even and look as though it was just an ordinary machine stitch in terms of regular, even, small stitches. It does take quite a lot of practice, but this is a great project because you're only doing a really small area, and if you match the thread colour, it won't show too much if it's not perfect. I've speeded this up, obviously. Now, there you go. So we've finished with free motion now. We are going to bury our threads though. So we make sure that we pull both threads to the top if they're not already. We're going to tie a knot and then a second knot. Be careful when you pull these threads because they do have a habit of snapping. And then I'm threading them through a big needle and then pushing the needle in between the layers. So this is just under the top fabric in the wadding, travelling down a little way and then pulling it, giving it a little tug to bury the knot, and then snipping that thread off. Now you see I'm pulling it taut, so when I let go the thread disappears into the fabric, and there you go. So back to normal. Feed dogs are back up, ready for normal sewing, and the ordinary sewing foot is on. And we're going to quilt now. Make sure you use a longer length stitch to quilt. So this is a 3.5 length, and I'm going to run down, and then I'm going to pivot on the corners. You'll see there, pivot, and I'm using that red border as the edge, as you can see. I'm going to take my time going around the corners. There you go. Now the hardest one is coming back to the beginning because obviously you don't want a little gyuk there, you want it to be nice and even. So take your time on that last little bit. Bury those threads, and I'm doing the same thing the next row out. You can see where I'm doing it. Now this is it's all beer and skittles while you're doing 3 sides. When you get to the 4th side, what you want is to make sure that you're pulling it. So if you watch my hands, I'm actually pulling the patchwork with both hands at the back and at the front to try and keep it nice and taut, because what I want is when I get to the bottom corner, I don't want a little fold in the fabric, and it's very easily done. So I'm pulling to try and make sure that that doesn't happen, and you'll see that I'm going quite slowly. I've actually put this back to normal speed now so that you can see that. Pull and even. See, I'm really working that last little bit to make sure it's nice and even. There. Okay. Now, no forwards and back. I don't like to see it on quilting, so I just leave the tails and then bury them. Now here I'm going to trim the whole thing. I'm just showing you a little bit of this because you can see what to do. We're just cutting around the edge of our patchwork. We're not cutting anything off the patchwork. We're just evening up the edges and trimming. There you go, all trimmed, ready for action. Take your 2 binding strips and lay them right sides together at right angles. Draw a line and then stitch across using a 1.5 stitch length. Here I go. Then what you need to do is trim that seam allowance down to 1/4 of an inch, because obviously you've that extra corner on there. There we go. And take it to the ironing board. You're going to press it in half, wrong sides together, and you really do need to do this accurately. You want this exactly in half. You'll see me pressing open the seam there, but exactly in half. I've got my 2 back pieces here, and I'm going to fold up a 3/4 inch turn on one long side of each piece and press, and then I'm going to go back in and fold under the edge of that to make the smaller seam. You can see now there the second fold, and this is a great technique. Doing that first fold and then going in to do the second one is a game changer. Now I'm going to sew down this seam, this fold, hem I suppose you would call it, on the 2, as I say, it's just one of the long sides on each piece for your back. Snip your threads, of course, and there they are, all neatly hemmed. Now take your cushion front and turn it over and lay down your back pieces with the hem that you've just sewn in the middle, so up there at the top where the red is, and put them both right sides out. This is very counterintuitive if you've ever made a cushion before. You feel like they should be right sides together, but this is right. Wrong sides together is right. I'm clipping them here. I'm taking time to get everything lined up, and then I'm going to go in and sew a sort of an 1/8 of an inch seam all the way around, just holding all those layers together. Sew on your bindings starting halfway along one seam, and sew from the halfway point to within a 1/4 inch of the corner, and you'll see me putting in a pin at the 1/4 inch point here so that I know where to sew to, and I'm coming down until I get level with the pin. Then I'm going to go back 3 stitches and then take it out from under the machine, cut the threads, take out the pin, and this is how you fold the corner. So you fold, can you see there the little bit that I didn't sew? You fold up so that that's a straight line away from you, and you can see that little diagonal fold, and then down, and this down fold is flush with the edge of the cushion, and you can see the little diagonal line there again where my nail is, and you're going to start sewing there. You're going to go forwards and back, just 3 stitches, and carry on down here until you get to within 1/4 inch again. Now I'll just pause to put the pin in at the 1/4 inch point so that I know where to sew to, and then go back and do the same thing again with that corner. When you've done the 4th corner, you're only going to go a little way around that corner so that you've got a really big gap at the end. It's very important that you have a nice big gap because we're going to do the join. So we cut off one end, and this is a 2.5 inch square that I'm just using to measure, and you cut the other side so that the overlap is the same as those squares, and you'll see that there's plenty of gap. Now, it's hard to describe what I'm doing here, but watch carefully, and you're basically putting them at right angles to each other. I like to pin this corner first and then go across diagonally and pin the opposite corner. Drawing a line is really helpful for beginners, just gives you something to guide you, and then stitch that with a 1.5 stitch length. Now we're going to trim the seam allowance there down to 1/4 inch. Unfortunately, I have sort of taken this pretty much off camera to do, so I'm sorry it's not terribly clear. It's not clear at all, but hopefully you get the idea. Now clip the join, do clip it. I'm afraid I didn't film this, so you'll have to just take my word that I sewed up that bit. And then we're going to start turning over our binding on the edge and putting clips on. The corners are a bit fiddly, but if you kind of knock over the inside and then fold it, I like one side of the mitre is under and one is over, and I like the under and over to be the same on the outside as on the front as the back. I find that makes a neater finish. So there I am folding that over. See, it looks pretty neat. Yeah. Now I'm going to put a clip on that just to hold it in place and get ready for some hand sewing in a minute. Now here I am burying the knot in the seam allowance under the binding and doing a slip stitch, and I take a small bite of the back fabric and then a tiny bite of the binding, and I repeat that action. I'm just going to let you see. I've realised I haven't got any light on there. To turn the light on, it got better. I'm just going to let you watch for a little while and see the technique. So it's a small stitch from the backing fabric and a tiny bite of the binding. When you're stitching the binding, make sure that you're not trying to sew through the stitching that holds the binding on, the machine stitching, because that will be very hard to sew. Now I'm coming up to a corner. I'm going to slow down the video again in a minute, I think, and we're taking much smaller stitches as we approach the corner. Now I like to get as close as I can before I take the clip off, and then puts a couple of stitches right on the very corner so that they're holding that actual corner, and you can see me pulling it a bit tight there. And then you can turn the corner and carry on. Now I'm going to end off this thread in a minute because it is getting very short. Now you'll see that what I do is fold back the binding and then do a couple of stitches in seam allowance underneath the binding. Just a couple, and then I don't even bother cutting the thread. I actually just tuck it up there under the binding and then rethread and carry on and bury the thread in the same way I did originally. Now I've kept this in because this is quite an entertaining game of chicken here. So you can see I'm playing thread chicken. I've got about 4 inches of stitching left to do and about 3.5 inches of thread. So it's getting harder and harder. There's much rethreading of needles as the thread comes out because it's super short, and I'm fighting because I desperately don't want to have to cut anything off, but of course the end has gone fluffy, so I'm going to have to give in and get the scissors and trim a little bit off the end. But eventually I do win the battle. Now of course you're going to have a beautiful nice piece of thread that is plenty long enough so that you're not going to end up playing chicken like I am here. Final little bit is me burying the final little thread with a bigger needle. You'll see me get a bigger needle in there just so that I can bury that. And there she is, all finished. There.
I hope you enjoyed making the robin cushion with me. If you did, please like and subscribe or comment below. This will help Rainy Hill Designs to grow. Thank you. The link for this pattern is in the description below, which will take you to our Etsy shop where you'll find other beginner-friendly patterns that we've designed. Thanks very much for watching today, and I hope to sew with you again.